In this episode, we're going to make a group of security threats easier to understand by focusing on what each one is trying to do and what a technician should notice early. New students sometimes think they need deep hacking knowledge to understand security threats, but that is not true at this level. What matters most is learning how to recognize the kind of problem in front of you, what part of the system or organization it is targeting, and why the first signs matter. Some threats try to knock systems offline. Some take advantage of trusted users. Some abuse weaknesses that defenders do not know about yet. And some trick software into doing the wrong thing with user input. A technician may not be the person writing security tools or chasing attackers across the internet, but that technician still needs to recognize the danger early enough to protect users, limit damage, and get the right people involved before the problem gets bigger. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful way to start is by separating three ideas that beginners often mix together. An attack is the harmful action itself, such as overwhelming a service, abusing a weakness, or stealing information. A vulnerability is the weakness that makes the attack possible, such as bad input handling, poor access control, or software that has a flaw no one has fixed yet. An exposure path is the route the attacker uses to reach the target or take advantage of the weakness, such as email, a web form, a remote connection, a shared account, or an open service on the network. When students understand those three ideas, security stops looking like one giant mystery. Instead, it becomes a question of who or what is being targeted, what weakness is involved, and how the threat reached the system. That way of thinking helps beginners make sense of very different attack types without getting lost in complicated detail. Denial of service, DoS, is a good example because it shows that not every attack is about stealing files or breaking into accounts. A DoS attack is mainly about making a service, system, or network resource unavailable to the people who actually need it. The attacker may flood the target with traffic, overload it with requests, or otherwise keep it so busy that real users cannot reach it normally. The target in this kind of attack is availability. If a website, login portal, support tool, or online service cannot respond because it is overwhelmed, the attacker may have achieved the goal even without reading one single file. For beginners, this is important because it broadens the picture of what an attack can be. Sometimes the goal is not theft at all. Sometimes the goal is simply to interrupt business, create confusion, damage trust, or distract the organization while other harmful activity happens at the same time. A DoS problem often shows up through symptoms that look like ordinary slowness at first, which is one reason early recognition matters. Users may report that a site times out, an application keeps failing to load, or a service works 1 minute and then disappears the next. A larger version of the same idea is distributed denial of service, DDoS, where many systems are used together to overwhelm the target. A beginner does not need to know all the engineering behind that right away. The simple point is that the traffic or requests may come from many places at once, which makes the disruption harder to ignore and harder to filter quickly. A technician should hear repeated complaints about the same resource becoming unreachable and think about more than just one unhappy user or one broken browser. When many people lose access at the same time, availability itself may be under attack, and that changes the kind of problem the technician is dealing with. Insider risk is very different because the target is often trust, access, and information that already sits behind the normal security boundary. An insider is someone who already has some level of authorized access, such as an employee, contractor, vendor, or partner. That does not mean the person is automatically malicious. Insider risk includes both harmful intent and careless behavior. A worker might steal data on purpose, but another worker might expose the same data by using poor judgment, sharing files the wrong way, or ignoring security rules. For beginners, this topic matters because many people imagine attackers as strangers on the outside. Yet real damage can also come from people who are already inside the environment and do not need to break in the usual way. They may already have the account, the badge, the device, or the access that the organization trusted them to use. This is why insider risk should never be reduced to the simple idea of bad employees. A person can create insider risk by acting carelessly, by trying to be helpful in the wrong way, by falling for social engineering, or by ignoring procedures that seem inconvenient. A user might copy sensitive files to a personal device, send information to the wrong person, or keep privileges they no longer need after a job change. Another person might abuse legitimate access on purpose to steal records, damage systems, or help an outside attacker. What makes insider risk different is that the threat often uses normal trust as the path in. The target may be data, account access, business processes, or system integrity, but the exposure path is often the insider's own permission and position. Early recognition matters because the longer improper access or misuse continues, the more likely it is that the harm will spread quietly before anyone realizes something is wrong. A zero-day attack is built around a weakness that is not yet widely known or not yet fixed when the attacker uses it. The phrase zero-day points to the idea that defenders have had 0 days to prepare a patch or broad defense once the weakness becomes actively dangerous. For a beginner, the key lesson is that not every attack depends on old, ignored problems. Some attacks hit a flaw before the normal patch and protect cycle has had time to catch up. That makes zero-day attacks especially serious because organizations may be running software they believed was fine until the weakness was discovered the hard way. The target of a zero-day attack depends on the flaw itself. It might be a computer, a phone, a browser, an application, or a service. What makes it stand out is not the type of device alone. It is the timing and the fact that normal protection may lag behind the attacker. Early recognition matters a great deal with zero-day activity because defenders may not have a clean label or simple fix ready at the start. A technician may notice strange crashes, unusual behavior, unexpected access, or other symptoms that do not match the usual explanation. That does not automatically prove a zero-day problem, but it does mean the technician should not assume every odd event is just a routine bug. In real support work, the first clue may be that multiple users are seeing something new, sudden, and hard to explain. The exposure path could be a website, an email attachment, a network-facing service, a document, or some other normal-looking interaction that reaches the vulnerable software. The important beginner lesson is that unknown weaknesses still behave like real risks even before there is a well-known name for them. If the symptoms are serious and unusual, they deserve attention even when the exact cause is not yet clear. Injection attacks target the way software handles input. Many programs accept data from users, devices, or other systems, and that is normal. Search boxes, login fields, form entries, messages, and application requests all depend on input. The danger appears when software treats harmful input as if it were safe, ordinary input, and then does something it should never do. In simple terms, an injection attack works by getting a system to process attacker-controlled content in an unsafe way. The target is not just the visible screen or the data field itself. The target is the logic behind the application and the trust it places in incoming data. For beginners, this topic matters because it shows that software can be attacked through the information it accepts, not only through obvious downloads or suspicious files. A harmless-looking field can become an exposure path if the application behind it handles input badly. This is important because many people assume that if a website or application looks normal on the screen, the danger must be somewhere else. With injection attacks, the ordinary parts of the interface can become the opening. A text field, a form, or a submitted request may be enough if the application does not check input carefully and treat it safely. The attacker may not need to guess a password first if the application itself can be tricked into exposing data, changing behavior, or allowing actions it should never allow. A technician at the A+ level does not need to build secure code, but that technician should understand the pattern. If strange results appear after certain inputs, if records are behaving unexpectedly, or if an application is doing more than the user actually asked it to do, bad input handling may be part of the story. Early recognition matters because application abuse can quickly affect many users and large amounts of information. Exposure paths tie all of these threats together because every attack needs some route to reach the target. For DoS, The path may be network requests directed at a service until it cannot cope. For insider risk, the path is often legitimate access that is misused or handled carelessly. For zero-day attacks, the path may be whatever reaches the vulnerable software first, such as a site, file, service, or app interaction. For injection attacks, the path is usually input entering the application through a place that seems normal on the surface. This idea helps beginners stop seeing threats as random events. An exposure path is the connection point between the weakness and the attacker's action. When technicians think in terms of paths, they get better at asking useful questions. How did the threat reach the system? What kind of access did it use? And where is the weak point that let the harmful action succeed? This is also why early recognition is one of the most practical security skills a technician can build. A beginner may not write the final incident report or redesign the system afterward, but that beginner may be the first person to hear the complaint, see the symptom, or notice the pattern. A service suddenly becoming unreachable for many users, a trusted employee using access in unusual ways, a wave of odd application behavior after a new issue appears, or a business tool acting strangely around certain inputs are all meaningful signals. The sooner those signals are treated seriously, the better the chance of limiting the damage. Waiting too long turns small clues into larger incidents. If a DoS attack continues, more users lose service. If insider misuse continues, more data may leave the organization. If a zero-day or injection problem continues, more systems, accounts, or records may be affected before anyone gets control of the situation. For technicians, the job at this level is not to become alarmed by every strange symptom, but it is also not to ignore patterns that point to real risk. The best approach is calm attention. Notice what is happening, who is affected, when it started, and whether the problem points to availability, trust misuse, unexplained weakness, unsafe input handling, or some other path of exposure. That kind of thinking helps separate one user's isolated problem from a wider security concern. It also helps the technician report the issue clearly to the right people. A good early report is often based on plain facts, not fancy language. Several users cannot reach the same service. A staff member is accessing data outside their normal role. A new problem is affecting many systems in a strange way, or an application behaves unexpectedly when given certain input. Clear observation is a real security skill, especially for beginners. Another helpful way to think about these threats is to connect each one to the main thing it attacks. DoS attacks availability by trying to keep real users from reaching a service. Insider risk attacks trust and control by misusing access that already exists. Zero-day attacks take advantage of a weakness before defenders have had normal time to respond. Injection attacks go after the way applications handle input and trust data coming into them. Exposure paths explain how those attacks reach the target in the first place. When beginners group the threats this way, the topic becomes more manageable. Instead of memorizing isolated words, they connect each concept to a simple question. What is the attacker trying to affect, and how is the attacker getting there? That way of thinking makes it much easier to recognize danger quickly even when the exact technical details are still unclear. As we close, the biggest lesson is that these threats matter not because every technician must become an advanced security specialist, but because early recognition changes outcomes. Denial of service attacks go after availability. Insider risk grows out of trusted access. Zero-day attacks take advantage of weaknesses before normal defenses are ready, and injection attacks abuse bad input handling in applications. Exposure paths are the routes that let those attacks reach their targets, and understanding those routes helps technicians ask better questions and spot danger sooner. A beginner who can recognize that a problem may be bigger than one user, deeper than one bug, or more serious than one strange message is already developing real security awareness. That awareness is valuable because support teams often see the first signs of trouble. When they notice them early and respond clearly, they help protect systems, users, data, and time before the damage spreads further.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.